The story takes place in a small southern town where the oppressive summer heat mirrors the tense undercurrent of inequality that has lingered for generations. The streets are lined with historic homes and towering oak trees, but beneath this picturesque facade lies a deeply divided community. Racial bias is a quiet but constant presence, shaping the lives of those who live there. 16-year-old Ava Jenkins, a bright, kind, and determined black girl, is walking home from the store with a bag of groceries. Ava is well known in her neighborhood, a straight-A student and a source of pride for her community. She is focused on her future and determined to rise above the challenges around her. However, on this day, her path will cross with an act of cruelty that will change everything. Nearby, a group of young white police officers is loitering outside the station. Their laughter cuts through the still afternoon air as they joke and exchange idle banter. Bored and restless, they notice Ava walking down the street. Her confident stride, her poised demeanor, everything about her seems to bother them. In their eyes, she is too proud, too self-assured for a black girl in a town where prejudice is as old as the cobblestone roads. The officers exchange glances, their boredom giving way to a shared sense of malice. They call out to Ava, pretending to have a legitimate reason to stop her. Sensing something is wrong, she tries to keep walking, but they persist. Their tone grows sharper, their words more insistent. Within moments, she finds herself surrounded, her path blocked. What begins as mocking remarks quickly escalates. They shove her toward the back of the station where a large barrel of stagnant, filthy water stands. Despite her protests and pleas, the officers force her into the barrel. Ava struggles, but they laugh, dismissing her tears and humiliation as nothing more than entertainment. The sound of their laughter echoes long after she stumbles away, drenched and trembling with anger and shame. Unbeknownst to the officers, Ava is not just any girl. She is the daughter of Nathaniel Jenkins, the recently appointed black police chief. Nathaniel is a man of unshakable principles who has spent his career fighting for justice in a system that often works against it. His historic appointment was a hard-fought victory, celebrated by many in the black community but resented by some of his white colleagues. What the officers intended as a harmless joke would soon spark a reckoning they could never have anticipated. When Ava arrives home, soaked and shivering, she finds her father waiting for her. She tries to speak, but her words come out in gasps, choked by sobs. Nathaniel kneels beside her, listening intently as she recounts the events. Her voice trembles as she describes the humiliation, the laughter, and the way they treated her as though she were less than human. Nathaniel's heart aches with a father's pain, but his anger burns even brighter. He sees the hurt in Ava's eyes, and it fuels his resolve. As a father, he assesses immediate justice. As a police chief, he knows that acting out of pure emotion could undermine everything he has worked to build. He must approach this carefully, strategically, if he is to hold the guilty officers accountable and expose the larger culture of bias within the department. "You promised to protect us, Dad," Ava says, her voice steady despite her tears. Her words are a challenge and a plea, a reminder of the responsibility he bears, not just to her, but to the entire community. Nathaniel begins his investigation in earnest. He quietly gathers evidence, including surveillance footage from the station's security cameras. The grainy video captures everything. The way the officers surrounded Ava, the mocking smiles on their faces, the way they shoved her into the barrel without hesitation. He collects testimonies from witnesses who saw Ava leave the station soaked and crying. To protect Ava and ensure impartiality, Nathaniel keeps her identity private during the initial stages of the investigation. Meanwhile, the officers remain oblivious, casually joking about the incident and treating it as a trivial moment of fun. They have no idea that the girl they humiliated is the daughter of the very man who now holds their futures in his hands. Word of the incident begins to spread through the community. Among the black residents, there is outrage and a growing demand for accountability. This isn't the first time, some say, pointing to a long history of abuses. Among the white residents, opinions are divided. Some dismiss the incident as a harmless prank, while others are uncomfortable but unwilling to speak out. The tension in the town grows palpable as the community waits for Nathaniel to act. Nathaniel decides to confront the issue head-on. He calls for a public town hall meeting, inviting residents, community leaders, and members of the press. The gathering is billed as an open discussion on police-community relations, but Nathaniel has a much more specific agenda. He knows that to create real change, he must expose not just the actions of the individual officers, but the systemic problems that allowed those actions to occur. The town hall is packed. Residents from every corner of the community fill the seats, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity, anger, and hope. Nathaniel steps onto the stage. His presence commands attention. The room falls silent as he begins to speak. He describes the incident in detail, laying out the facts without embellishment. Then he plays the surveillance footage. The room is transfixed as the video shows Ava's humiliation. The silence is deafening as the weight of what they are witnessing sinks in. Finally, Nathaniel reveals what many had begun to suspect. The girl in the video is his daughter. "This wasn't just an attack on my child," he says, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "It was an attack on the very principles of justice and equality that this department is supposed to uphold." The crowd erupts in a mix of shock and outrage. The officers involved, seated at the back of the room, shift uncomfortably as the reality of their situation dawns on them. Nathaniel announces that the officers have been placed on administrative leave and will face a formal investigation. He also outlines plans for sweeping reforms, including mandatory racial sensitivity training and the creation of a civilian oversight board. The fallout from the town hall is swift. The officers are formally charged with misconduct and assault. Their actions spark widespread condemnation, not just from the Black community, but also from many white residents who had previously stayed silent. The incident becomes a catalyst for long overdue conversations about race, power, and accountability in the town. Ava, though deeply affected by the trauma, finds strength in her father's unwavering support. She channels her pain into purpose, becoming an advocate for justice. She speaks at schools, community centers, and rallies, sharing her story to inspire others to stand against injustice. Her courage and resilience make her a role model for many, especially young Black girls who see in her a reflection of their own struggles and dreams. For Nathaniel, the fight is far from over. He knows that true change requires more than punishing a few bad actors. It requires dismantling the structures that enable such behavior. He pushes forward with his reforms, despite resistance from some within the department. He meets with community leaders to build trust and ensure that the voices of those most affected by systemic bias are heard. Over time, the town begins to change. The reforms Nathaniel implements lead to greater accountability and transparency. Conversations about race and equity become more open and honest, creating a sense of progress that had once seemed impossible.